yen, but I guess we can see what happens.
Let's get into it, my man.
All right, so the first question I got for you is, when and why did you first decide to invest in XRP?
So, 2019, I was in university, and just honestly, it's I would almost call it a stroke of luck or love at first sight. I had been invested in the traditional stock market, but I had never really touched cryptocurrencies. I caught wind of XRP from just some random account, and the thesis made sense. And so as I dug deeper and deeper, it only confirmed what my initial thoughts on XRP. And then from there, the rabbit hole goes deep and it's wide.
I got you, yeah. So it just happened a while ago. What year did you start investing in again?
2019.
2019, I got you. Is there a reason, like, you decided on XRP over other cryptocurrencies, like Bitcoin and all that?
Honestly, the use case is really what meant anything to me. I had heard of Bitcoin, and I definitely don't dislike Bitcoin. However, it's I never understood the thesis on integration into the traditional finance world with Bitcoin, and so that as a matter of ROI and matter of future technology, that is what grabbed my attention more than the libertarian aspect of it. I was more the financial aspect of XRP is really what caught my attention.
Okay, yeah, I got you. So what's the primary use case for XRP for like the people in here that don't really know?
So I would say there's a couple, to be honest, but obviously cross-border payments is the kind of standalone, which is in the current economic world, there are pooled accounts of liquidity in banks called nostro-vostro accounts, which are sitting there as these massive financial institutions. They have to hold different pools of currency so that they're able to transact within their own facility. So they're called nostro-vostro accounts, and it, depending on who you ask and what you see, it's between 20 and 27 trillion dollars sitting in financial institutions around the world, which makes them illiquid by nature. Obviously, it helps their own personal liquidity, but in terms of the global liquidity, it keeps it locked up, and it's called walled gardens, but the point is to break down those walls and to free up those capital into different investments or however you see that going. But with XRP, the primary use case is, as Ripple has been doing it, is operating and helping these banks be able to instantly, and it goes into one of your later questions, the price fluctuation, because it is sent so quickly, there is no price fluctuation. You instantly, in 3 seconds, can go from US dollar to Japanese yen, which is what they're trying to do anyway. But without the intermediary currencies, they don't have to keep hundreds of billions or trillions of dollars sitting there so that they can instantly transact.
Yeah, that's very interesting. I bet, because a lot of this, I mean, I don't even know a lot of this, so thanks for sharing that.
No, man, there's, as I said, as the rabbit hole goes deeper, there's lots of different use cases that they are attempting to do. Remittance payments there's trillions of dollars of remittance payments annually. Those the institutions that do those have made their bucks off of not scamming. Obviously, they do provide the service, but heavily taxing the people.
I got you. Are you worried about like the SEC and like lawsuits and anything like that? Because I know there's been some stuff like that going on with XRP and Ripple Labs. Does that worry you at all, or not really?
Honestly, I see it as a blessing because in the financial world, there will be nothing done without pure clarity. And so as XRP is actually wrapping up, or Ripple, or is wrapping up their lawsuit, I do foresee massive overhauls on the current crypto market, and the meme coin, like, the casino nature of it and the unregulated nature of it, I do believe is reaching its peak, and then we will see the hammer will come down, and lots of people have been security trading, which the SEC will not treat lightly. And so I'm actually grateful for the lawsuit because even, Ethereum, there's a whole thing about how the SEC never even investigated them. So they gave them a free pass into the crypto world, into the regulated crypto world. Those all will come back. There needs to be clarity, especially when dealing with these mega financial institutions. I like the lawsuit obviously hurts the price in the short term, but in the concept of transacting trillions of dollars daily, it has to happen.
Yeah, absolutely. So you kind of think like the regulatory landscape and everything the government's doing is good for the long run. It's just like short-term headwinds that will help later on. I did hear
Absolutely.
about the Ethereum thing before too, so that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, and as we've seen even from just yesterday, one of the most trusted exchanges just lost $1.4 billion of customer funds. These kind of things cannot exist with the future economy we're talking about. So as these regulations come out, banks and it's been coming out, it's like banks will be able to custody your assets, your crypto assets. There's no, the days of the Wild West are coming to an end where anyone can just start up an exchange and then, oops, it gets scammed and they go into hiding or running. Those days are ending.
Yeah, I got you. That's definitely a good thing then. So you
For
think
sure.
the government like evolving is going to help them in their adoption, I'm guessing, right?
And that's the two-sided critique. Some people in the crypto world their goal is to be anti-government. Well, that's, idealistic in nature, and I have my own problems with the government. All roads pass through Rome, and you have to have the regulatory clarity and the onboarding of the United States government for these things to happen. We're not talking about the XRP was not meant for the people. It is a finite resource that it's the blood of the future economic system. For that to work, the banks will need their own share. It's not meant for individual retail investors. That's not the end goal.
Yeah, you can correct me if I'm wrong here, but I feel like a lot of people just try to compare XRP or other cryptos to Bitcoin as like a store in value with like no government really involved, but that's not really what we're in XRP for.
No, absolutely not. It's, store of value is, you can say that for Bitcoin technically if you overlook a lot of different things. Personally, though, the thing XRP was created to do is not technically be a store of value. It's meant to be the blood flowing through the system.
Yeah, I got you. Because that's a comparison I hear about all the time. Because I feel like even not XRP, like every altcoin gets compared to Bitcoin. I don't know if that's really fair.
And not that I even care, because the true winners don't mind competition, XRP has already flipped Bitcoin in market cap once. That's, something that some people don't like to talk about, but it's 100 billion, while it seems like a lot, is actually for the global financial system is just about the perfect number for these banks to be able to have some, but also where it's a deflationary asset that is not going to be manipulated in that manner.
Yeah, I get that for sure. So how do you handle like the volatility of XRP? Do you buy the dips? Do you just kind of hold it? Do you not really check your portfolio on it much? Just keep up with the news, or what's your insight on that?
Yeah, I'm in the mind of it's better for time in the market rather than trying to time the market. So I have been consistently buying since then, and I, like you said, yeah, I don't check the price every day. Nothing changes in one day in this kind of world. The amount of partnerships coming out with Ripple and, global banks and everything keeps there's some personal journey, and then also if I'm not a trader, I just buy assets that I envision are going to be worth more in the future, and I hold them. You can try to trade XRP, and it's volatile enough to where you probably could make, significant percentages onto your bag. I've been around long enough. I don't see that necessary, and I actually value my XRP more than I care to wager to get more.
Okay, yeah, I understand that. That's awesome. And I'm guessing, do you just only hold XRP in your portfolio?
Absolutely not. No,
No? Okay.
I'm in the camp of ISO 222 will be the implementation on the messaging and global financial system. So while XRP does seem to be the front runner of the group, there are not many, but there are a couple that have significant use case potential in the future as well. And so I started with XRP, and I stacked my first bag in XRP. But as you again go down the rabbit hole, there are some things that are done better or are focused on more by other things. So no, I am not just invested in XRP. However, that is my 75th percentile to 95th percentile bag.
I got you. So mainly, but you're still a little bit diversified in these other ones with significant use cases. I got you.
Yeah, absolutely. Because in my mind, there's I forget the current number. It goes up by hundreds of thousands a day. There are millions of cryptocurrencies out there. 99% of them are scams. 99.9% of them are scams. So they present no real use case value. They will be, just like many early internet companies, they will have their time, but then they will go away, and there will not be any coming back for them, especially given the Wild West regulatory time we are in. They only can exist in that environment. They will not exist in the future environment when there is significant regulations on what is a cryptocurrency, what is a security. You can assume the politicians in the US and the SEC are either dumb, incompetent, or they're playing it out as necessary. PayPal has been around for 25, 30 years. It's digital money is nothing new, but sometimes the way they talk about it makes you think they've never even heard about it before. I don't quite subscribe to that camp. I do subscribe to the camp that there is more going on under the surface, and the amount of NDAs that have been signed are just telling to the point that there's stuff going on under the surface that we can't quite, as a retail investor, see.
Yeah, and I don't know how you feel about like all the meme coin stuff that's been going on ever since the Trump coin kind of came out. I feel like that's also kind of hurt like the reliability of the crypto market. I don't know how you feel about that, but
Yeah, absolutely. I bought some Trump coin. I bought some Melania. You can make quick, like, my ultimate thesis has been, if you can turn that into more XRP, that's probably your best play. However, it's a casino, so there's, no risk. There's no point playing if you can't stomach the risk. It is terrible for the ecosystem, though. And I actually it's a funny thing you asked that. Going into the Trump presidency, I was actually feeling very hot. We had our pump, we were looking good, life's good. He drops that meme coin, and basically a string of events since then has just led to Argentina, the country, rug pulling, however many people. We're not in a good state. However, I'm not here for the state of the crypto market. I'm here for the state of, the ISO 222 token market, and that is stronger than ever. That is, the XRP army has gone through the lawsuit and people calling it a scam and whatever, to the point now Brad Garlinghouse is potentially going to be in the White House. Regardless, he had been in the White House and talking with Trump. If you hear Brad Garlinghouse speak, I don't think there's any way you could ignore what he's saying.
yeah, that's awesome, man. I did hear about that, him going to the White House and stuff like that, so that's awesome. And that kind of connects to my next question. So I feel like it's hard for some people. I don't know, where do you go for like news and developments on XRP? Because like I follow you and I check like on this, but like where do you look? Like communities, sources, stuff like that for news?
Honestly, X is your best and worst friend. You can find some of the smartest people on X and they give their takes for 10 likes. And then you have accounts that get thousands of likes that are just slop posting for engagement. The X ecosystem, if you can navigate it, is the ultimate best, just given the up-to-date, real-time, whatever. You could also go the traditional simple way, which is just relying on, Ripple. They put out a lot of interesting content on what they're doing. It's just dependent on your risk tolerance, but, I don't want to say it too forwardly, but the Riddlers aren't the dumbest people in the world. I don't know if they're entirely right, but there are definitely a lot of things that were said in my past 6 years have come true in the as time goes on. Whatever that means to you, the truth lies somewhere in the middle. I use X primarily. The traditional media is it's slow and cumbersome, and it seems like the things I was saying about the NDAs with them, there's been instances of them talking about it on the business channel, and they get hushed up really quickly. I stick to X, and there are a lot of talented people on X who are on the forefront of the industry and break the information best.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. The only thing like I would have to say is sometimes you got to be careful because, like you said, some people just lie about what they see. So
yeah, that's the discernment is really a gift, but also something you have to practice. Yeah, that's amen to that. Lots of people just lie for engagement, and there are some crazy numbers out there. However, it's only crazy on a short-term timeline. It's like if you zoom out, they might be right, they might be wrong. Obviously, as people are, slaves to the moment, they, if it doesn't happen right now, why isn't the price going up? It's like, well, things are a little more complicated than that. So it's discernment is key, and to follow a couple trusted good accounts, and then also one of my biggest, know what you hold, and you only lose money if you sell it. So in specific assets that aren't, it's like that aren't good, getting rug pulled and have anonymous owners, it's like if you just hold, you're going to be okay. The panic selling is actually a bigger problem than panic buying.
Oh yeah, 100%. I agree. And that, for me, it kind of helps with the background of stocks, because like stocks don't always go up, but if I believe in what the company's doing, I'm still going to buy it. I'm not going to sell it and lose money. So I totally get that.
Yeah, and I almost compare it to, if you saw what Apple or Google was doing, would you have bought in 10, 15, 20 years ago? Obviously, there are ups and downs, and price doesn't go just up. But if you see a revolutionary technology, it's probably best to own. If you saw Tesla, people thought it would never get to 420, whatever. If you understood their concept and the technology behind it and what's going forward, it's like, well, obviously you would have bought it at $5. But the majority of people would never do that, because that's taking a risk, and that's, using foresight and looking into the future. Most people want to make 50% overnight and sell. That's not really how it goes.
Yeah, and the people that did kind of see that future, like what the technology could do, and they bought in at $5 and $20, now they're millionaires. So, look where that got them.
Yeah, well, it's, patience and also foresight and discernment, which is, my biggest things. I'm a younger man, so I'm looking into the future. I want, when I'm 50, 60, 70, what's the world going to be like? That's some of my investments. I do hope to, as time goes on, it's like, obviously I don't think XRP is a 50-year project. However, Swift, which it is replacing, was longer than a 50-year project. So, technologies get implemented, and I hope to position myself wisely for the future, rather than just being, a slave to the moment, seeing a candle go 20% up and buying that. I'm looking more into the future.
Yeah, and that's the way to do it, man. All right, so I got like 3 more questions here, and then if anyone else has questions, if you want to drop them in the comments of the space, I'll pick a couple of those that are pretty interesting, because I know some of you have already done that. But so kind of connecting to what we're talking about, what would make you decide to sell your XRP? Like price targets, milestones, something that might happen? What would cause you to sell?
Things that would cause me to sell. I intend on leaving XRP to my children. That's, a concept that I have considered, and I've reached the point to where no matter what, I will have XRP set aside for my children. Honestly, put in escrow just so there's no temptation. But in terms of time, I have no time date. I honestly think as we're going forward, it's not just cross-border payments. It's tokenization of the real world. Real estate payments. Everything will be put onto the XRP ledger. So the XRP ledger is infinitely more valuable than XRP in and of itself. It allows for they just put out the RLUSD, the Brazilian stable coin. The digital euro will probably go on there. Everybody is racing to put everything they can on the XRP ledger for interoperability and for freeing up capital and allowing traditional finance. There has to be a corridor for trade to occur. There are many corridors that have limited liquidity or whatever that just, they don't allow for the type of interoperable and the future of money that we see. So I value the XRP ledger above XRP which, though subsidiary, will increase the value of XRP as the native currency of the ledger. Price target, personally, I do also believe that, as we said earlier, the financial institutions want your XRP. XRP was not made for retail investors. So, maybe I'll sell some at 100 just so I can buy a Lamborghini. But moreover than that, the banks will want to, just as, current capital works, they will want your XRP and you'll be able to lend it to them. I anticipate that economy, and I hope to be a liquidity provider and a future bank into the future for the others. In terms of price targets, I hope to not be in the position in my life where I need to sell it to cover myself. However, I do have some, 5% at, 50, 5% at 100, maybe 5% at 250. It's all kind of arbitrary, but, you got to find something that works for your own personal financial situation. Some people are investing with money they need. Some people are investing with money they don't need. That's, everybody's strategy will be a little bit different. But personally, I will try to retain as much as I can into the next economy.
That was a great answer, man. I totally agree. I mean, just holding it and seeing if you can pass it down to your kids, that's awesome. So where do you see it in like the next 5 to 10 years, like price-wise?
So I actually think we're on the precipice. It's the SEC case seems to be one of the final hurdles into the banks want it. The product is mint and the product is top of the line and futuristic. It saves so much money. It's the product is there. However, just given the current regulatory landscape, they can't interact with it until it is given the green light. That is, as I'm sure y'all all see on X, the topic of many discussions when the SEC case will be dropped. I do envision it will be in 2025, though. And so once that gets dropped, the floodgates do get unleashed. I'm not even particularly talking about ETFs. Those are, those are almost just a side category. Like, it's just a different way to invest in it. That's not how the banks will use it. The banks will need XRP personally so that they can interact in the future economic model. So in the next 5 to 10 years, I do envision, it's also arbitrary given the dollar has been losing, 6 to 10% a year. Like, it could be worth $1 million, but how much is $1 million worth? Can you buy a loaf of bread with it? Or could you, what is the buying power of the United States dollar? I do envision, though, even if you run rough numbers of, the market cap, or like the amount of XRP versus the amount of currency locked in Nostro Vostro, the amount of currency locked in remittance payments is, I think it will be easily past $100 within the next, I would almost say year, but in the next 5 to 10 years, most definitely.
Awesome, man. Yeah, that's great. So what advice would you give to someone considering investing in XRP today? Someone that didn't get in at, I don't know the exact prices, like 20 cents 3 years ago or anything like that. What would you say to them today?
Create a thesis and stand by your thesis. There are going to be rainy days. There are going to be days where, you get shit on X. There will be days where you think, oh, there are so many, partnerships. How come it's not rising? You got to zoom out. So personally, I recommend to people to do your own research, to come up with a conclusion. In the world of XRP, your money does not help me. I don't want your $5,000. That does nothing to the price of XRP. the retail consumers are not swinging the price like what is expected to come. So if you believe in, the technology of the XRP ledger and what they're doing there, then I would invest. I personally went all in there. I saw the future of that technology. I saw the XRP ledger, the ecosystem they're creating there. That's what's attracting me, and I want to be a part of that. Some people are looking just as a purely economic, investment. They want to put in $100 and take out $200. That's a tough game because XRP is one of the most volatile crypto assets, and it's every day it can change 10-20%. You can't be swayed by that. So if you are going to be swayed by that, I would recommend to not touch it. Gold is a better friend. The S&P is a better friend. If you can conceptualize the use case of the XRP ledger, once you get to that point, you're going to be trying to buy as much as you can.
Yeah, I got you. Because a lot of people that follow me in like my community are mostly stocks. So you kind of, it sounds like you can kind of look at XRP as like a stock and make your own thesis for it and do your own research on it. So that is kind of cool. There's not a lot of crypto like that. And a lot of things, like the one thing I hear people harp on a lot is about how it has a leadership team, basically. And I don't understand why so many people think that's a bad thing.
But that's, it comes from the libertarian camp. They call it, centralized. Technically the consensus ledger and how the nodes work, it takes 80% to overthrow, or like to implement a change. That is pretty decentralized to me, and they've given these out to universities and companies and whatever. The ecosystem they're building is built upon trust, but also they're including the leaders of the future financial sector in it. Additionally, the XRP, it does not have a leadership team. The XRP is the asset. Ripple, which uses XRP for the things we've talked about, they do have a leadership team. And I would hope a company based out of the United States transacting with all these major banks does have leadership teams that are public, and at least you can see what's going on. Some of the, and given they're based out of San Francisco, or you could go with crypto companies that are based out of the Bahamas, which, don't have the same regulatory oversight, don't have the same audits, don't have the same transparency. I subscribe to the philosophy that all roads lead through Rome, and so for it to gain the global adoption, it has to win in the US. It can't start from abroad and come in. It has to be cleared from the ground up here.
Oh, 100%, I agree.
And go ahead. But
go ahead,
as we said about stocks, you can invest in Ripple, the company, if you're an accredited investor. They do specific, currency or share sales. So there is, if you are a pure stock guy, Ripple is one of the, when they IPO, it's going to be a big show. So if that's something some of your, stock people, once you get to accredited investor status, you can get into, obviously there's a whole litany of other investment opportunities, but Ripple Labs you can invest in.
That is really cool. I didn't know that you could do that. That's pretty sick. All right. So to kind of end this off, I got a couple questions from the comments, and then I think just a guy on X had some stuff he wanted to add, if that's cool with you.
Yeah,
man.
Absolutely. We've been interacting a bunch, so I'd love to hear what he has to say.
Awesome. So one question I see a lot, personally, and we got a couple in the replies to the space, is How do you think it stacks up against like other payment-focused coins like Stellar? Because I see it compared to XLM all the time.
I think it's complementary. Honestly, Stellar is more of a peer-to-peer kind of asset, which is, more of just the upgraded Bitcoin. XRP is, B2B, so institution to institution. I don't envision XRP being, what people pay their coffee with. Like, it's like, I don't ever see that, being the use case for XRP. While that is great and, it could process that, I think XRP is going to be more of an under the scenes kind of thing, while XLM has been partnering with IBM and some of the other more public facing institutions. So I do think it's complementary, and I think the cake is big enough to share between the 8 or so, ISO 222 compatible tokens. The cake is big enough, and if you do some of the market stuff, it's like the winners get 80, the lion's share get 80%, and then the 20% is split between some of the others. That's probably how I envision it. That's why the ROI, I say, is probably better on XRP. However, there are other ones that will win, and I do think it's gonna coexist in a ecosystem together rather than it being a zero-sum game.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that makes sense. It's kind of hard for a company to even be allowed to monopolize a whole thing. So, I mean, there's going to be competition. There's going to be multiple players in this space. So that absolutely makes sense. And then another question a couple people asked is, like, what wallet do you use to hold your XRP? Because there's people talking about they want to get it off their exchanges because of the Bybit hack. A couple people said that.
Yeah, well, that's, step number one. Like, exchanges, if it's not your keys, it's not your wallet. So, not your crypto. So that's just the story as old as time. Exchanges are meant for buying and selling. You need to have a dedicated cold wallet. There's a couple good ones out on the market, like Ledger is a historical one. However, they did have the whatever you classify it, whether it's a scam or not a scam, but a breach in customer information, or whether they're implementing the buyback, or not the buyback, implementing the regulatory European, access portals. That's, definitely something scary, but I have been around. So the Ledger is one that I have used throughout the history. Zaman is a unique kind of, if you're going to be trading, however, that's still hot wallet. There's, it's really, you have to find Tangent's a unique one that's, more XRP centered. It's really you got to find the one that is best for you, depending on which coins you're holding. Some, allow a bunch, some only allow some. I personally only put XLM, XRP, and some others. So for myself, it doesn't, matter as much trying to get the compatibility. So, that I do kind of, I leave everything in cold storage. I am not a trader, so I have, get rid of Coinbase, don't, if it's not your keys, it's not your crypto.
Yeah, I totally agree, man. Then I got a question from Jake here. This one's a little bit longer, but I'll just read you what he said in the replies. He said the price piece doesn't make sense to me though, because can't they just create an infinite amount of XRP and it's not a store of value, so why purchase it? It seems the same as holding $1.
So XRP is a deflationary asset. So for there to be more XRP created, it would have to gain more than 80% consensus from around the network. That seems very hard to do, and I doubt that would ever happen. It's at 100 billion, and it's deflationary. It burns the transaction fee. So now we're at, 99 billion, something. that is in essence, the opposite of the dollar. The dollar is an inflationary asset that they can just print more of. So, and it goes back to it goes back to the simple the understanding of cryptocurrency. They could make more Bitcoin also. If they had the consensus, you could. That's kind of part of the game is if somebody got control over your ledger, they could do that. So that's why it's very important to be decentralized very widely and very securely, which is, one of the critiques of Bitcoin is it's a monetary race to hash power, which, there has been historical monopolies, and there potentially could be future monopolies, which would allow them to change the algorithm. In XRP, the nodes are sent wide, and it's not, you can't pay for a node. It is it comes from Ripple. So, to that point, XRP is a deflationary asset, and so as it is hard to, abstract thought the prices in your mind. However, like we were just saying, in purely the Nostro-Vostro market, there's $20 trillion to $27 trillion locked up. Even fractions of that going into XRP are massive.
Yeah, for sure. And then I got one more question for you, and then we'll let just the guy on X speak and ask his questions. But someone messaged me and they said, what do you think is the most promising development or partnership that Ripple has achieved or has to achieve to kind of bring XRP to the next level? Because I know we talked about the SEC and with that lawsuit falling off, but what else do you think they'd have to do?
So honestly, the coming out of RLUSD is massive. To have a native stablecoin on the ledger, and then coming out with the Brazilian one, and the digital euro is going to be coming soon. The stable coins onto the XRP ledger are massive for financial institutions and for the stability people so hope for when using cryptocurrencies. The future of cryptocurrencies is not an investment device, it is a payment mechanism. So, the price will stabilize, but also the stable coins allow for these different corridors to interact seamlessly. And I just shared a post, they sent $50 million worth of XRP for 0.000015 XRP. So basically a penny to send $50 million. In no other ecosystem in the current world can that occur. So in that manner, the stablecoin development does allow for more traditional finance. The SEC developments, that is going to unlock the portals. Additionally, the SBI over in Japan. Japan is a very forward-thinking society, and the banks in Japan will be using XRP this year as their payment mechanism. Again, when we say payment mechanism, it's instant transfer from Japanese yen to the currency they're looking for. XRP is solely the intermediary. The point is not to hold XRP as how you send the money. The XRP ledger is where you send the money, and it transfers through XRP, but only for a fraction of a second.
Yeah, and this kind of connects. There was a guy earlier. He asked in the replies about how would the price fluctuate on XRP if the U.S. sent $1 billion to Europe and it went into euros. Would that have an effect on the price, or is that something we don't really know yet because it's on such a large scale?
No. So the only thing that increases the price is if people are trying to buy it. So the thing that will increase the price is when the banks need to buy their specific allotment of XRP for them to hold. them using the XRP is not how the price mechanism goes up, unless, that caused people to see that and then they wanted to buy in because of it. But using the XRP ledger is not how the price goes up. It's, supply and demand. So there's only 100 billion XRP, only. But as the financial institutions and banks are able to custody it and are able to acquire their portion, that is what will drive the price. Not the use of it, but the acquisition of it.
Yeah, because to use it, they would have to own the XRP to do these transfers.
Yeah, precisely. Yeah.
Yep. Cool. All right. Well, I'll bring up just a guy on X, and we can hear him out, and yeah, should be good to go.